in Bradford. Now, the way we interact with technology has changed dramatically in the last decade. Nearly 8 out of 10 people now own a smartphone, and according to a new report by the communications regulator Ofcom, we're now becoming increasingly dependent on them. It's estimated the average person checks their phone every 12 minutes, with 40% of us taking a look within 5 minutes of waking up in the morning. But for the first time ever, the number of calls made on mobiles has fallen. Instead, we're turning to messaging services like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger to keep in touch. Rory Jones has been to meet one family to see how technology has changed their lives.
Dad, what are you doing?
Making some crazy music for Instagram.
Meet the Louis family and a home full of smartphones and tablets which have transformed the way they live.
I'm Andre and I've got a smartphone.
I'm Kirsten and I've got a smartphone.
I'm Jake and I have a smartphone.
I'm Alice and I'm too small.
Dad, how do you use your smartphone?
I use my smartphone to check email and text messages.
And how has it changed your life?
It's made me become a more independent person. I'm visually impaired, so I find that I can use my phone to do a lot more tasks than I could previously, and it enables me to navigate safely.
Mom, how do you use your smartphone?
I use my smartphone to wake me up in the morning, to tell us the weather so we can plan our day, to do all the shopping so I don't have to drag you guys around the supermarket every week.
Andre makes a living from composing music. The technology for visually impaired people on smartphones has given him a whole new way of working.
And 2.28.
But Ofcom says we've all become dependent on our phones over the last decade. The average person spends 2 hours and 28 minutes a day on their phone. 71% of users say they never turn it off, while 78% say they couldn't live without it. This report shows that generally we're pretty happy with the changes smartphones have brought, particularly the ability to connect with friends and family. But we are concerned about just how much we use them, and there are questions of good manners. Should you be checking your phone at the dinner table, for example? Well, nearly everybody over a certain age thinks that's right out, but the under 35s, well, around half of them are okay with that.
And are there any rules about how we use our phones?
There are rules. You are not allowed to use your phone outside of the house. We do not use our phones at the table, and you're not allowed to use it for over a certain amount of time each day.
The Louis family rules do allow everyone to multitask on phones and tablets while in front of the TV. Up and down the country, we're all deciding what are good manners for the smartphone era. Rory Jones, BBC News.
Joining us now from Lancaster University is the psychologist Dr. David Ellis. A very good evening to you.
Good evening.
These are fascinating and frankly slightly scary stories about our use of smartphones. How surprised are you, first of all, that people are checking them every 12 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, they're really interesting findings. I don't know if they're that scary. I mean, it's perhaps not surprising that people do check these devices a lot. I think what's interesting is that Ofcom have collected this data, I take it, by just asking people. And actually, people aren't very good at estimating that. So we've found in our research, for example, that while people may think they check their phones a certain number of times a day, it's actually often a lot more than that when you measure that behaviour from the device itself.
And why do you think they do it?
Well, I think because people are social animals, and what smartphones allow us to do is communicate to people at any time in any place. And we know as psychologists that makes people happy. So if you're chatting to someone, then that makes you feel happy. So it makes sense that people are checking their phone to see what's going on, or replying to a message.
I have to ask you, do you check your phone every 12 minutes?
Do I check my phone every 12 minutes? I don't know. I have looked at my own usage patterns and they are quite extreme, but that perhaps says more about my job as much as it does about me.
Fair point. Would it be fair to say that people are dependent on their smartphones? I mean, does it verge on an addiction?
I think that there's quite a leap there. For it to be classed as an addiction. I think there's a lot of myths around technology usage at the moment as well. So, constant comparisons between technology use and drug use aren't very helpful because they're also quite inaccurate. People use their devices a lot, But that's a very different thing from problematic usage. So there probably are people out there who do use their phones too much, but there's also people out there who spend too much time eating or too much time exercising. So there's always extremes of any behaviour. But I think the evidence simply isn't there yet to say that this is an addiction.
What could the drawbacks be, though? I mean, are there health issues? You mentioned drug use, for example.
So I don't think it's fair to make any comparisons between technology use and drug use. I think, given the existing evidence, the argument you could make is that one thing that using a smartphone, for example, stops you doing is engaging in physical activity. And we know that that's a risk factor for lots of other illnesses and disease. So I think it's that time that could be spent elsewhere. So I think if you want to level a kind of negative about it, it's that it probably is another reason for us not to take physical activity. In saying that, many people are moving away from television and onto their smartphones, so it's kind of moving from one platform to another.
And I appreciate there are positives as well. For example, they enable people, of course, to work more flexibly. I just wonder, looking to the future, there are trials now, aren't there, for the next generation of smartphones, 5G. What might that mean for us?
I mean, it could mean all manner of things. I mean, certainly there is the continual rise of more wearable devices, and recent reports would say that there's going to be about, or predicted to be, 240 million units shipped by 2021 of wearable devices, which are becoming cheaper and more affordable. And that coincides with the rise of the Internet of Things, so more devices in our home and at work connected into bigger systems. The use of maybe more virtual assistants, and perhaps a bigger transfer away from perhaps the television being the centre of our entertainment towards smartphones and other digital devices. I mean, that might sound a bit like, oh, there's more of the same. Of course, all it takes is for one new technology to come along and disrupt that. So it's very, very difficult to predict, but certainly more bandwidth, more data is always going to open up more opportunities.
We've got to leave it there. Dr. David Ellis, I'll let you get back to your phone. Good to talk to you.